Hello and welcome to this exciting demo on domain flip over solution. And if you have not watched the first part of this demo, domain flip over, then I strongly recommend you to watch the first video on domain flip over. I'm going to paste the link in the description so that you can look at it. And that particular video would give you the detail about the domain flip over solution, how it has been found advantageous in Active Directory domain consolidation project, no matter what the use case may be, whether it is your acquisitions, mergers, divestitures, or migrating your on-prem Active Directory to intra-ID. Wherever you are running in a challenges and complex Active Directory domain consolidation project, that's where this approach is going to help. And all the details of challenges and advantages are given in that presentation. And this is going to be a real demo, technical live demo where rubber meets the road and you can see the solution in action. And that's this video is all about. So without any further ado, let's just dive into our lab, and I would show you how this lab is structured for the simplified understanding of the solution. So if you see this visual diagram here, we have got two Active Directory forests. One on the left hand side is fabricam.com, which is a single Active Directory domain forest. Consider it as the source Active Directory. And on the other side, on the right hand side, we have a multi-domain AD forest, contoso.com, that has two child domains. One is conso.contoso.com and second is emia.contoso.com. Now, conso.contoso.com is our target Active Directory. Consider that you have developed a new greenfield Active Directory domain in an existing Active Directory forest so that you can apply the zero trust security principle in this domain. You can design this new domain as per the best practices of zero trust, right? Your situation in your organization may be different. You may be collapsing this fabricam domain or migrating this domain into an existing domain. It could be a brand new domain. It works in both scenarios, right? So that's just the background of this approach here. Lab also has an emia.contoso.com. This is created in the context of that if we have to show both inter-forest migration and intra-forest migration, we can demonstrate both of them. I don't think I would have enough time to walk you through the intra-forest domain migration, which are generally way more complex than inter-forest migration because of inherent Microsoft Active Directory architecture, limitation of SID history cannot be brought over, also the limitations of single use SPNs and UPNs in the forest, and that creates interesting challenges and dynamics. Having said that, that does not mean that it is not doable. We have done it multiple times, and but from the video length perspective, I think I would leave that section for today's presentation. And if anybody sees an interest into that down the road, I could create a separate video for intra-forest Active Directory domain consolidation. For now, we would be working in inter-forest Active Directory domain consolidation between Fabricam and Conso Active Directory domains. As the focus is on the domain flip-over solution, so I'm not going to go into all other technical details and prerequisite. I'll quickly walk you through, but not going to show you how to create a two-way trust, how the SID history traversing is going to be configured, how you deploy the migration tool, and how you configure the migration tool. That's not the scope of this work, because again, I need to be careful for the overall length of this video so that it doesn't get boring, right? So that's our lab structure, and I think now we are ready to jump into my lab, which is running on a hypervisor Windows Server 2012 R2. I have an old server that I have used sometime in my lab, and that's where we will be working today for demonstrating you this solution. All right, so let's get into the lab. All right, we are on our fabricam.com Active Directory domain controller single server here. We have an OU that we are using for this demonstration purposes, where we have our computer objects, where we have our groups, where we have our users. These users are already synced to the target side, but let me just quickly walk you through. The trust is already created between Fabricam and the console. If you recall the video that I shared with you in the PowerPoint, and that trust is already existing. SID history traversing is configured, and the tool that we are using here is the Quest tool here that is already configured to sync objects from the source to target Active Directory. So I'm not going to go into this, and let's go to the console DC. So if I go to the console DC, because I am doing both interforest and intraforest migration as I said, so we have a separate OU for the Fabricam and separate OU for EMEA to sync the objects. And if you see, the users are synced here from the source Active Directory. One of the key element in interforest migration is the SID history. So you will see here that the SID history has already been brought over. Right here, the SID history is here. Same is the case with the groups. Here we have renamed the group because there is a potential conflict between interforest and intraforest. Both of them are migrating to the same Active Directory domain. But also here you will see that the SID history is also brought here, right? So SID history is here, Quest is there, and we are almost ready to go into the solution. So as we have seen in our video on the slide that we have a PC that we are going to test, and in order to make sure that we can demonstrate you the whole test successfully, we need to create a user profile so that when we flip over the profile, we can see how exactly it behaves, right? So let's look into this user. This user is actually Jeff Stevenson or Stevens, and if we see here CMD, come on, then we should see that he's still logging on to the Fabricam, which is our source domain, correct? So let's just, why does it not right? So here you can see the user is a Fabricam 917010, which is actually Jeff Stevens' account name. So logging on to Fabricam, and if you see the host name here, that FabPC001, and if you look into the system, this machine is still part of um, your Fabricam domain, right? So that's where we are making sure that the profile is all ready. And this machine is still in Fabricam.com domain, so the machine has not been moved. The user is still in Fabricam, and what we did here, that in order to test the profile migration, we have change the desktop the picture. We also create a pre-migration folder so that we can see once we migrate that. On top of it, we have created a couple of folders in documents, my documents, so that we can test it after we flip the profile over. We have also set the edge setting here with some favorites, and we can also set for this user, I forgot to do that, the home screen default page, I mean, let's do that. And then we can turn the home page. So now we are all set. This should just be good. That means his profile is now ready to be tested, right? So we have the home page, we have the favorites. This account has already password saved to log into the portal. So we'll see that should just kick in here. All right, so all good. On top of it, we have also mapped the drive so that we can see the results when we finally flip the profile, that nothing is changed. So this user has a map drive which is share1z, right? And I think I created a file here already to make sure that we can test it. And also, we have configured the profile desktop redirection from the group policy perspective. So this desktop is saved at the centralized location, and we should be able to see the desktop content there too. So I would just log off from here, and then we'll see the solution, right? I'm going to sign out here while I'm going to go and show you how the solution. So I want to show you how we have configured the drive mapping and the folder redirection. So I am on my Fabricam domain controller here. Here is my group policy. There is where our users sits, and I have a group policy here to map a drive, and that group policy is actually doing both the things. It is redirecting the desktop to this location, desktop redirect folder on the domain controller itself, as well as it is mapping the drive, the Z drive on the share one, right? So if you look here on this particular machine and you go to the shared folder, and it only has the permission to this HR group, which this user should be the member of it so that he can see and manage this shared drive. Similarly, the desktop redirect, it has already created is a redirection folder for this user. I cannot open it, and I shouldn't be able to open it because this is, I don't have the rights. This is owned by the user. So that's all set and working from that perspective, right? So the whole profile is ready. We are ready to test the domain flip over solution. Now, before I actually start talking about, let's just see what our core objective of this domain flip over solution. Number one is that we don't want to migrate the workstation. Number two is we want our users to start login the new ID. Number three is that we want to make sure that your user profile stays the same, whether you log in with the old ID or new ID. In our scenario, whether you log in with a Fabricam ID or you log on with Console ID, there should not be any difference in the user desktop experience. It should be same pictures, desktop setting, all your drive mappings, all your Internet Explorer setting or ad setting. Nothing should change from the user perspective, right? Those are our core objective. And of course, we also want to create some logging so that we can see how it's happening. And you also want to make sure that we don't run into kind of a loop so that this machine gets into loop and nothing can be accomplished, right? So how do we control everything that we do? And on top of it, is there any way to tailor this solution to a select group of users and select group of machine? Those are our core objectives, right? That's where this solution would revolve around, and you will see how easy and simple it is. So what we have done here, that as you know, that our computer that we are going to test, the PC that we are going to test is sitting in the demo computers. Here is this machine object here. So we have created a group policy, which is called profile migration. Actually, this is a user profile migration. Now, in your production environment, it may be a different scenario where you link this policy to start with, but honestly speaking, this policy would be applied, but it would be filtered in my scenario, because since I only have one machine, I have not done any filtering. But in your scenario, you will create a security group and you will add the required machines that needs to be flipped over, and then it only applies to the select people. And especially when you're doing the POC with the application testers, as I detailed in my first video. You would start adding corresponding application testers machines into that security group, and policy gets applied only to those machines without impacting the rest of the environment, right? That's very important. Now in terms of settings, this is interesting to see. Right, the first setting that you will see, allow cross-forest user policy and roaming user profile policy. What does it mean and why it's so important? Remember, our core goal here is that we don't migrate the workstation, but the user is now starting logging on from the new ID, and at some point all the users would start logging in from the new domain. Now, in that case, how does we manage group policy effectively? Obviously, workstation is still back on the old domain, in this case, the Fabricam domain. So the group policy for the workstation would be applied from the fabricam.com domain, which is the source domain. But by the way, now user is now not logging in through Fabricam IDs. The user is logging on from the new target active directory, and in our case that's a console active directory. So we need to make sure that the same zero trust user based policies can be applied from the target active directory, and this setting allows us to do that, right? So with this setting, all user settings are allowed applied to the target active directory, while computer settings are applied back from the source active directory. So this is very important. Now, we also do not want user intervention in our logging process. That means what we also did here is, under the hood, when the users get rebooted or this group policy gets applied, their default logon domain name is automatically changed from the source to target active directory. So in our case, though the machine is still back on fabricam.com, but when the user tries to log on without even knowing, they are actually logging on to the new target active directory, which is console. And by the way, as part of our migration tool, we have synced the same ID, so same account name is not changed and the passwords are not changed. So for users, it's transparent. They don't need to be educated, they don't need to be told anything. They're good to go and log in normally as they do on a daily basis. Right? That's the power of it. And then we go down here where the actual solution is. So we are managing this profile flip over, which we'll see shortly. That both the profiles of the new user and old users are pointing to the same profile image path. That's the catch, right? I repeat this, both the users, old and new users, are pointing for the same profile image path, so that no matter how they log in, their profile remains unaltered. They don't see any difference, and that's the power, right? And that's why you can roll back very easily. You can log on to any profile, you see the same setting. If you have made any changes in one profile, you will see it in the second profile, because basically you're using the same profile for both the IDs. So this is the script that's got copied to the user's machine, Windows scripts folder. And from there we create a schedule task, because it has to make registry changes, and it will work under the system account as a scheduled task that runs only at the logon time, right? Once the user logs in, then it kicks in, and then we don't want to run it multiple times. So the script has the checks and balances, so that it creates the marker registry, so that once the user is successfully done, it will not run it again, right? That's the whole big logic behind it. I hope that is very crystal clear for you. And now when we see that to the actual uh, machine, which is what we have been working. Remember, we logged off from this machine, and now we're going to try to log back again. But before I log in back here, you will see now that the domain name is already changed to console. The machine is still in Fabricam, but the group policy setting has made me do that, and users do not have to do anything. Users use their regular account, that is this guy, Jeff Stevens, and then he types the same password that he has been using in his old account, because that has been synced through the migration tool. And then we click it, and it's going to create his new profile, right? That's the Microsoft default behavior. So now right now it is working on generating the new profile, new folder, user profile folder for the users. But as soon as this kicks in, the scheduled task would kick in, and it should do its job to point both the registry entry, which I'll show you, to the same profile image path, and it will prompt users would be prompted a message that your profile is being migrated, and your machine will reboot in few minutes. That's the first message. And then within a few minutes it will see the message that, hey, your machine is going to be rebooting. And that's pretty much it, right? It might take 2-3 minutes, because the script is doing three primary things, or rather four, right? Number one is that it goes into the registry, it finds the old user sid, it finds the new user sid, and it makes sure that the new user profile image path is pointing to the old user profile path. That is done in the registry. Then it comes down and it says, okay, I'm not going to add the ACLs, the permission for the new user, into the user profile folder. So it has nothing to worry about anything. By the way, this solution does not believe in SID history. So irrespective whether it's an intra-forest migration or inter-forest migration, it would work flawlessly, because you are reapplying the profile folder. So there's no dependency on SID history on this case. That's a huge improvement here. So it will work equally work well in both scenario, in inter-forest and intra-forest migration, right? So, and then the second thing, that's the registry changes. Second thing is the permissions reackling. Third thing, that it would create a marker registry, which under the HK local machine software profile list, profile flip folder, and it will add the entry for the user that is being actually flipped over. And then it also creates a log file in the program data folder. So this is what this script is all doing while I'm waiting for the profile to be generated, right? So let's just wait for a few more minutes and we will see all these details that I just talked about. And here you go, right? So the message pops up, the profile migration completed for, and system will reboot in 15 seconds, right? It went pretty quickly, and hopefully in next 15 minutes or 15 seconds, apologies, it will restart. The machine is restarting, and that's pretty much it. So the workstation has rebooted successfully. We're going to try to log in back as the user, and again it's a console domain, nothing has to be done, and user would just sign in back here, and we'll see whether the profile has successfully been flipped over, right? So it should be just popping up shortly. So user has successfully logged in, and as you can see, the desktop picture remains the same. The pre-migration folder is still exists there, and it could be pretty much because we have a folder redirection. So this is not a conclusive test for us to say that profile has successfully been flipped over, but we will shortly prove it that is completely done and it is successful. So let's see. Remember that in earlier phases when we were preparing the profile, we created a folder within the documents folder, and if it still exists there, that is a proof that we have flipped over the profile the same way. So now the user log in as any user, they see the same results here, right? So you see here, that's absolutely the same thing that we had before. So profile is successfully migrated. Let's check our edge setting here and see whether that settings are retained now or not in the new profile. So you can already see that the color is the same, the icon for the home page is the same, and we also have the favorites that we have added earlier when we were building this profile. Let's see what happens now and whether it can successfully log in. Yep, because it's logging on fine. We need to type the credentials because the new account now, and so this is working here fine. um, Basically, what else is left? Now let's see here what happened in the registry side. So how these two profiles are working together as one single, like a same profile, that's what I'm going to try to show you through the registry. And if you see here, H key local machine system, sorry, software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, and then you will see the profile list here. And what's happening in the background, if you see there are multiple of them, but you will see this is the user, one of the user is 9170 is the profile image path. If you see here, there would be a second user from the different domain that would also see both the users. One of them is a Fabricam, the source account, and one of them is the target, which is the console domain, and both of them are pointing to the same profile image path. That means irrespective how you log in going forward, your profile stays the same, and that gives us the chance in the POC to test all the application. So test user comes in, logs in with his new ID to start testing the application and other settings, and if he's okay, he continues to work. If he or she is uncomfortable or something is not functioning as expected, he or she can log back and continue working with the old account while that problem is resolved, right? That's where you get the predictive sets of results. You know upfront all the application, everything that you're going to do during the final cutover, that how it's going to unfold. All those findings that are not functioning well, that can be taken care of during the cutover migration as a preparation, and you do the final cutover, and in one shot you have the ability to flip the entire domain over to the next other side, right? That's the beauty without migrating workstation, which is a very time consuming, cumbersome, long process. So you speed up the whole project, you minimize that, and you are providing the predictable set of results, which is what I mentioned in my first slide. Now, the second important part, which I mentioned as an objective here, is also to make sure that we have the markers here, right? So you see here within the software, profile flip over is the new key here, and within that you have this record now. Every time when the script kicks in, it checks to this registry path. If it finds it, it doesn't execute next time. So you don't get reboots, and looping of rebooting and looping of this script running. That's how it's being controlled. It has the time, it has the user, it has his old SID as well, right? So that's how it is done. And now let's look at the logging part of this, uh, the flip over script. So if you go to PC and you go to, and now we go to the program data, you go to the profile flip, and here is your log file, which gives you what happened in this process. So it tells you that it has rebooting it and it's all good. Right now the last part, because it has logged in next time, it doesn't have to worry, it only has one profile, right? So this is all good, this is all gone as per our plan. Now let's see here how does it behave in a kind of a rollback scenario. So we'll do a couple of things here to prove the point. We'll create a folder here and call is a post migration, and then we can, because there is a folder redirection, so I would still want to make sure that we are testing it properly. And we can do one more thing here in the browser here. Let's see which site we want to go to. And we can add this into favorites, And let's see what happens now. So you have made some changes while we were logged in as a console domain. And just to prove the point one more time, let's do this here and see the machine is still back on the Fabricam domain, right? So this is still in Fabricam domain. If you see it here, so its machine is not moved. So that means we can do it for entire community of users once we are ready for that, right? That's one part. And you can also see that the user is actually logging on. This is a Fabricam. This is not a Fabricam user. This is actually a console user, right? So he's a console user, but same profile. Now you recall that when the originally this user logged in, it created an initial profile for the user, which is this guy. But as soon as our solution kicked in, it changed the profile to back to this guy. Right? So now this is not even being used. This folder is being used. So that's important. And now also you see here from the drive mapping perspective, it still has the same experience. They can still go. And this is, by the way, is working through SID history, because we have not done any reackling on the source where this share is located, but users, because of the SID history, can access the data here, right? So we can create another file here, and it's just working fine, and the folder redirection is also working in the background. So everything is working from the end user's perspective as expected, right? That's the best part of it. And except for, I think, the credential that we saved for the Microsoft Azure portal as a part of the security, that is not there. But other than that, everything is working as we agreed upon, as we planned, right? So now let's try to see whether the changes that we made as Jeff here are retained if he has to roll back to the old account, and that would prove the point. So this time, because the domain is already changed, I have to change back to the old domain. Okay, so we have logged back as a old user, the Fabricam user, and the changes that we made when we were logged in as a console user is still retained here. So no matter how you log in here, your changes are saved, so you do not have any data loss here. And as I said, it could be because of the desktop folder redirection. The real test would be if you go to the documents and we see the new post migration folder that we created. It's still here. So irrespective which user you are logging on, you don't see any difference in your desktop experience, which is critical and which is most important, right? Now, see here, if you see, and if I see the favorites here, I hope, and I have this favorite that I saved for YouTube. So everything, as we promise, is working the way it should be working, right? And there is no issue here because the user is fine to log back and still see all the changes that he or she has made in during the new user profile, right? And The script doesn't loop, so it's providing you the same results. Since this workstation is now working fine, right? Remember that at some point we need to migrate all the workstation, and hopefully I can show you quickly that now instead of running through a migration tool, we can just run a PowerShell script against hundreds and hundreds of computers parallel, and they can all be flipped over, or they can not flipped over, they can actually be migrated to the new domain, right? So that's the last part of this puzzle that we can show you. If I can show you that, that would be probably the end of this presentation. So as we have discussed in our first video, since all the users are now successfully logging on to the new domain while their workstations are still in the say old domain, and everything is functioning fine, we don't need to go through the circuitous workstation migration process to the tool, and we can simply disjoin the machine from the old domain into the new and add join to the new domain, which we can do through a PowerShell script, and it can run across in as many machines you want in one single shot. So that's where we have created a PowerShell script which is joined to new domain. We also have a batch one which could throttle the number of the workstation that you want to process parallel, and this script is using a CSV file, that is a computer CSV, where you have all the computer names. If I can just show you, this is the computer. We have only one machine. In your environment you can have 100, 200, 500, 5000 machine listed here, and then you execute the script to the PowerShell as an administrator, provide the required credential, which I did it, and you see here it has successfully disjoined and joined the machine to the new domain. And you will see the logs are also created in the temp directory here in this machine. That should show that this machine has successfully been joined to the new domain, right? And it has restarted the machine, completed. Now if I go back into Fab PC here, I should see that machine is actually rebooting or joining to the or already ready to be logged in to the console domain, right? So let's just see that. So now we can see the workstation has been migrated to the target domain console.contoso.com. So that concludes the entire demonstration. And before we close this presentation, just let's try to uh, recapitulate what we have been able to accomplish. So number one, that we have now proven that without actually migrating the workstation, we can allow the users to log in to the new target Active Directory, right? That's one big accomplishment. That means all users can start logging on from the new ID whenever and however we want to do that once the testing is done. Number two, the user profiles remains the same. It flips it over, so whether you log in with a new user, an old user, end user is experience is absolutely flawless. They don't see any changes. They don't see any impact on their login process. They don't see any difference in their desktop experience. They don't see any problem with accessing the resources. And this is a huge accomplishment from this project perspective. Once the POC is done and application testers have all tested this application, you can also ensure a predictable set of results, because the applications or devices that has been found not working, that could be fixed before you do the final flip over. And that means there is no surprise element, there is no concern when you actually finally flip the domain over to the new domain. And that's where that brings the value to this project as well. Next thing that we have also proven in this demo is that rollback is relatively easy without any IT administrative activities. All can be done by the users, and the uh, users can easily roll back whenever they want to without losing any data. And finally, we also proven that the workstation migration now can be done, the bulk workstation migration, that could speed up the whole process and reduces the overall timeline of the project, as well as it reduces efforts and overall cost of your project too. So that's all what we have promised in our first slide is now have been put to the test, and we have validated that it worked as promised. So I hope you guys like it. I hope it makes sense, and maybe it's a right option for you or your organization whenever you plan to do large, complex Active Directory consolidation work. Thank you again for your most valuable time, and have a great day or great evening wherever and whichever part of the world you're watching this video. Thank you again. Bye bye.